Good evening and welcome to the March 26th Zoning Board of Adjustment meeting. To my left is Mr. Carter Falk, who is the Deputy Planning Manager for the City of Nashua. Across the table is Mr. Jay Benkera, Mr. Robert Shaw, Mr. Steve Lionel, who serves as our Vice Chair, Mr. Jack Currier, Ms. Mary Ellen McKay, who serves as our Secretary, and I'm J.P. Boucher. I serve as your Chairman tonight. This meeting is recorded by written transcript and is also video recorded. We ask that you please direct all testimony into the microphone and that only one person speak at a time. If you don't have tonight's copy of the agenda, it's on the back table in the back of the room. Tonight we'll be hearing requests for deviations from the Nashua Zoning Code in the form of special exceptions and variances. And I'll go over both of those. A special exception is a request that seeks permission to do something that the zoning ordinance permits only under special circumstances. The 5 criteria that are required for this board to grant a request for a special exception are: 1, the requested use must be listed in the table of use regulations as a special exception. 2, the requested use will not create undue traffic congestion or unduly impair pedestrian safety. 3, the requested use will not overload any public water, drainage, or sewer system, or any other municipal system such as that other areas of the city will be subjected to hazards affecting health, safety, or general welfare. 4, any special regulations for the use set forth in other sections of the zoning ordinance are fulfilled. And 5, the requested use will not impair the integrity or character of the district of adjoining zones, nor be detrimental to the health, morals, or welfare of the residents of Nashua. A variance is a request that seeks permission to do something that the ordinance does not permit. The 5 criteria that need to be established for the approval of the variance are: 1, that the variance will be not contrary to public interest; 2, the spirit of the ordinance is observed; and 3, substantial justice is done; 4, the values of surrounding properties are not diminished; and 5, literal enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance would result in unnecessary hardship. Per the City of Nashua bylaws, a minimum of 3 or more affirmative votes are required to approve any application. Also, this board will hear all scheduled cases as long as a quorum of 3 voting members are present at this meeting, which we have a quorum tonight. Any citizen has the right to contest the decision that this board makes. Should we make a decision that you believe is an error, you have the right to request a rehearing. A written rehearing request must be received through Mr. Falk and the City of Nashua Planning Department within 30 calendar days from the day after a decision was made. Should this board not grant a rehearing request, you can file an appeal directly to the New Hampshire Superior Court. You can contact Mr. Falk for more information on that. Per our approved Zoning Board of Adjustment bylaws, the review and decision of each application occurs in 2 parts. The first part is what we call the public hearing. This is where the applicant and citizens address this board and speak to the merits of the case. The order of testimony is as follows. First, the applicant will have 15 minutes to present their case. Then those in favor will have a limit of 5 minutes each to testify. Then those in opposition or with questions will also have a limit of 5 minutes each to testify. And then the applicant has 5 minutes to speak in rebuttal. And then finally, a representative and only one person of those in opposition or with questions will have 5 minutes to speak in rebuttal. We ask that you please direct all testimony to this board and not to the audience. If you have any questions about an application, they are to be directed to the board, and we will get them answered. The second part of tonight's meeting is called a public meeting, where this board debates the merits of the case amongst ourselves. Please note that during this time, during the public meeting, there is no testimony allowed from the audience. We ask that you silence your cell phones. If you need to have a conversation, we just ask that you step out into the hallway. Mr. Falk, are there any changes to tonight's agenda?
No, there are not.
Okay. Is there any questions from the audience before we get started? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to call case number 1. The owner is John J. Flatley Company. The address is 10 Tower Boulevard and 200 Innovative Way. The description is as follows. John J. Flatley Company, owner of 10 Tower Boulevard and 200 Innovative Way, Sheets A, Lot 798 and 713, requesting a special exception from Land Use Code Section 190-112 to encroach in a 40-foot other wetland and wetland buffer for connection of utilities and stormwater management structures along with associated site work to construct a climate-controlled self-storage facility. That is in the PI zoning district. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. For the record, my name is Gerald Prunier. I'm an attorney with offices at 20 Trafalgar Square in Nashua, New Hampshire. The property is located in South Nashua. And to give you some bearings, the old Oxford
Attorney
Health.
Prunier, can you grab the mic?
Sorry about that. I do that every time. Thank you. This is the old Oxford Health Building. The Radisson Hotel is up in this area. On the other side of Innovative Way is the offices, the long office building. So this is in the middle. There's the restaurant building that's down in this particular area. What we are doing is, these are the wetland areas that we are impacting, and this is the buffer areas. We've gone to the Conservation Commission. I think you probably all have a copy of the letter. There are 2 conditions on it which we agree that we will comply with. And as a result of being in the wetland area, we have to get a special exception. The use is, as indicated, is listed as a special exception of the wetland ordinance. The requested use will not create undue traffic congestion or undue impact to pedestrian safety. This is going to be a storage facility, where a storage facility has very little traffic. If it has 15 cars a day, it probably has a lot of cars after it's built and occupied. It will not overload any public water, sewer, or drainage in the area. There is service by sewer and water in the particular area. There are 9 special regulations which I've attached to the application, and based upon previous custom, I won't read those, but we'll put them in the record. And last, it will not impair the integrity of the area. As I've indicated, we have office buildings in this area, restaurant here, and over here we have the hotel. It is a commercial area. That's what the use is going to be. I have our engineers here this evening. If you have any questions, we'll be glad to answer them.
Does anybody have any questions, Mr. Prunier? Mr. Currier?
I was just curious, what's the definition of climate control? What is the climate maintained at?
It means that you have heat and air conditioning.
Leave it at that? Okay.
I think you have a thermostat. You have a thermostat. It's somewhat similar to Southgate, where they have over on the north end of town, where they have a public storage facility as well. It's some storage facilities don't heat or don't air condition. Whatever's the temperature outside, that's the temperature you get inside, and it does. This one, they regulate the temperature and air conditioning.
And the other question is, just to clarify, it doesn't seem from the application here that this is anywhere within the 100-foot buffer of the border of the property, of the Tara property whatsoever. This is kind of centered in it.
Yeah, this is not anywhere near that.
Okay, just thank you.
Mr. Minkara?
Most of the impacts to the wetlands themselves and to the buffers seem to be fairly minor intrusions in most areas. Was there an effort or thought to try to just pull the building back so that there wouldn't be impacts?
I think we did, in the, if you've been up there, you can see the topo that complains. There is a parking lot in here that we are joining together, and the utilities are the main reason for that we have to go into, is for the main reasons we had to go to Conservation Commission. They had no problem with it.
Any other questions for Attorney Prunier?
Thank you.
Anybody else in the audience that'd like to speak in favor of this application? Seeing none. Anybody with questions or concerns with this application? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and open the public meeting. Mr. Currier.
Well, I think the application, as it's written, meets the criteria for the wetland special exceptions. You know, I appreciate Mr. Minkara's question, but, you know, I think the answer is pretty evident now that they need to get some utilities in there, and that's why we have the process of, you know, wetland impacts. So I think it is fairly minimized, or very minimized, with the current design. So I think it meets the criteria. I'm good with it as it's planned.
I would also agree with you, Mr. Courier. Any other comments? Would anybody like to make a motion? Mr. Courier?
Yep. Grab this one. I'd like to make a motion on behalf of the owner, John J. Flatley Company. Again, the address is 10 Tower Boulevard and 200 Innovative Way. The request tonight is a special exception from Land Use Code Section 190-112 to encroach in a 40-foot other wetland and wetland buffer for connection of utilities and stormwater management structures, along with associated site work to construct a climate-controlled storage facility. As I just mentioned, this is listed in the table of uses. By testimony, the self-storage facility will not create undue traffic congestion or unduly impair pedestrian safety. Again, by testimony, the vehicular traffic to a facility like this is low compared to other uses because of the occasional visits by renters, I guess you'd say, after the facility is constructed. I think the board finds it will not overload public water, drainage, sewer, or other municipal system. It's a pretty benign effect on any of those public utilities. I think the board finds that the 9 special wetland conditions are fulfilled. I'm not going to tick through the 9 of those, but they are addressed in the written application and touched on briefly by Attorney Prunier tonight. And I believe that the board finds that it will not impair the integrity or be out of character with the neighborhood or be detrimental to the health, morals, or welfare of the residents. And I just add that in the application, there's some language about how this sort of facility goes in well with the neighborhood where the local folks and businesses can store items. So I think the 5 criteria for a special exception are also met, and again, I make a motion to approve as presented. Thank you. Also, I'd like to, in the motion, note that there's a February 5th, 2009 approval by the National Conservation Commission. There's two stipulations that invasive species shall be removed and the impacted areas shall be revegetated. I would say that the applicant will meet that criteria, and I'd like to add the record of the Conservation Commission meeting to this record. And that's another one. So that's it for my motion.
Seconded by Mr. Lionel. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? That's 5-0. The motion passes.
Thank you.
I'll close case number 1. I'd like to just make a clarification, which I didn't at the beginning, and I apologize. Mr. Minkara is an alternate with the board. He participates in all our decision making and include all the cases. If a member needs to recuse themselves, then Mr. Minkara will be asked to step in. So at this point, Mr. Minkara does not vote, but he takes part, he participates in all our discussions. Okay, so sorry about that. I should have made that clear up front. So now I'll open case number 2, 3, and 4. So what we're going to do with this is Pennachuck Waterworks. There are 3 cases in front of us, and how we're going to proceed is the presentation really covers all 3 of the cases, the special exceptions that Pennachuck Waterworks is coming in front of us for. So we will hear that. We'll hear the presentation. I'll read into the record the 3 cases. Once we go into our public meeting and start making motions for the cases, they will be made individually, but we will hear the case as a whole. All 3 cases will be considered to be heard all at once. Any questions on that before I get started? Okay, so what I'll do is I will read all 3 of the cases into the record, and then we'll get going. So case number 2, the owner's Pennachuck Waterworks, care of John Bourvea, professional engineer, 206 Concord Street. Description is Penchuck Waterworks, care of John Bouvier, professional engineer, owner, 206 Concord Street, sheet 52, lot 118, requesting special exception from Land Use Code, section 190-24, section F, subsection 5, to allow a temporary wetland buffer impact within the 150-foot associated water body buffer for a water main construction that's in the R18 zoning district. Case number 3 is also Penchuck Waterworks. The description is Penchuck Waterworks Incorporated, care of John Bouvier, professional engineer, owner, L. Tinker Road, sheet G, lot 486, requesting the following special exceptions. 1, from Land Use Code, section 190-24, section F, subsection 5, to allow a temporary wetland buffer impact within the 150-foot associated water body buffer. And 2, from Land Use Code, section 190-15, section B, to work within a 75-foot prime wetland buffer. Both requests to allow for a water main construction. That's also in the R18 district. And case number 4, right, is the City of Nashua and Auto John Packaging, Boston Corp., 100 Northwest Boulevard, L, Northwest Boulevard, and L, Deerwood Drive. It's the City of Nashua and Auto John Packaging, Boston Corporation owners, Penchuck Waterworks, care of John Bouvier, professional engineer, applicant, 100 Northwest Boulevard, L, Northwest Boulevard, and L, Deerwood Drive. Sheet 8H, lots 18, 290, 488, 577, and 634, requesting the following special exceptions. 1, from Land Use Code, section 190-24, section F, subsection 5, to allow a temporary wetland buffer impact within a 150-foot associated water body buffer. And 2, from Land Use Code, section 190-15, section B, to work within the 75-foot prime wetland buffer and the 40-foot other wetland buffer. All requests to allow for a water main construction. Zoning district is the Airport Industrial and Park Industrial. That was a mouthful.
Wow.
So,
You did well.
welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Zoning Board. My name is Jim Petropoulos. I'm a civil engineer at Hayner Swanson, doing business at 3 Congress Street in Nashua, New Hampshire tonight, representing Pennachuck. Pete Tedder is with me tonight. Pete's an engineer with Pennachuck. And I'm wondering, do I get 45 minutes if I get 3 cases? I'll try to be brief. It's going to be tough to
We'll be more than
get
happy
it
to
in
accommodate
15,
you.
but I
understand.
appreciate you and thank you for doing this. We have one project in 3 areas of Nashua, and that's really what made 3 separate and distinct applications. We saw no other way to do it. So what I'm going to try to do is briefly tell you about the project, tell you about what the requests are, and then certainly answer any questions you might have. As just read into the record, we're seeking relief from section 190-24, which is the Water Supply Protection District part of the ordinance, and then 190-115, which is wetlands. So let me get you kind of an overview. We're really talking about the northern part of Nashua and the northwestern part of Nashua. This drawing here I handed out to the commissioners as well if you want to follow along. The singular project that Pennachuck is hoping to undertake is called the Northwest Pressure System Upgrades. And essentially what it includes is the Kessler Farm tank located up in the highest part of North Nashua, and provide storage and pressure to the many residents and businesses in North Nashua, needs to be replaced. It's a steel tank. It is in need of a redevelopment, and much like the tank at Riviera a few years ago that we did, it'll be converted to a concrete tank. That's about a 14-month project. And during those 14 months, it's vital to provide uninterrupted service to this part of Nashua. And so there's a series of water main extensions throughout that I'm going to briefly go through that will provide service during construction to the north and northwest part of Nashua. And once the tank is rebuilt, it'll also become part of the infrastructure. The 3 areas we're going to talk about is a section along Manchester Street from Pennachuck Junior High School, essentially, about 1,800 feet of main will be built off pavement on the east side of Manchester Street, up to Tinker Road, and there it'll cross Tinker Road and connect into the main on Tinker Road. That particular project, off-shoulder, impacts and lies within what's known in the Water Supply Protection District as lands within 150 feet. The Water Supply Protection District has a couple different zones, spells out some do's and don'ts, but one of the do's is you can work within that 150 feet as long as you get a special exception, as long as you're not adding pavement, as long as you don't have extraneous and large stormwater practices. So, first project, a new water main. It's a 24-inch line. These are large diameter pipes, between 16 and 24-inch pipes, so it's big construction. And really, to get off pavement was beneficial because we wouldn't be disruptive to Manchester Street, which is a busy collector road in that part of Nashua. That particular project impacts 9,057 square feet of the 150-foot associated water body area. The second part of the project is Tinker Road, just east of the bridge over the Effie Everett Turnpike. 865 feet of improvement is proposed in Tinker Road. About 360 feet of it lies within both the 75-foot prime wetland buffer and the 150-foot wetland. So the prime wetland brings in 190-115. I will tell you the Tinker Road project's interesting because most of that work is just off the shoulder of the street and then crosses the street. So we're not into any sensitive areas along that corridor. It's just work in the street, and because of the proximity to the wetlands, which are very visible from the turnpike and from Tinker Road, those buffers kind of blanket the right-of-way, and we're working in the right-of-way there. The third project is out in the very western part of Nashua. It is really kind of begins at the end of Deerwood Drive, actually Dumaine Street. And it is about 3,000 feet of new main that runs in a westerly direction and ultimately connects into the water system off of Northwest Boulevard. That route, Dumaine Street, they will jack a pipe underneath the railroad, turn 90 degrees, and they'll run down an existing graveled emergency access road. So it's an area that has been reworked in the past. That particular project impacts part of the 40-foot critical buffer, 5,170 feet, part of the 75-foot setback, 6,200 feet, and part of the 150-foot associated water body impacts. So 3 projects, different types of impacts to wetlands and to buffers. Manchester Street's off the shoulder so that we're not out in the street. Tinker Road, we're within the right-of-way. It just happens to be these buffers and regulated areas are blanket over into the paved road. And then Northwest Boulevard is parallel really to the railroad line, but it's in an existing developed area. A couple key points before I address the zoning issues. There are no wetlands being disturbed as a part of this project. There's no new impervious areas. They will be crossing streets in 2 locations. All these buffer impacts that we're talking about are really temporary in nature. Once they're built, they'll be backfilled, the ground will be returned to existing grade and condition, and that we think we've minimized traffic impacts as a result of these routes. Now, to address the zoning points of law is pretty interesting, Mr. Chairman, because by my count, 3 applications, different buffer requests, there's no less than 48 points to address. I'm not going to do it. It's all in the applications. But I would like to present to you what I think are the 5 points of the special exception. And my testimony is that I believe that they really apply to all 3 particular projects and all 3 particular applications. Condition 4, of course, is special regulations set forth in the code, differs a little bit for each project, but therein lies the application in which we individually addressed all those points. Okay, so the 5 points for special exception that I'm hoping apply to all 3 particular locations. Number 1, The requested use is listed as a special exception. In the Nashua Land Use Code, under sections 190-24 and 190-15, it identifies any alteration or any work within a buffer or a 150-foot associated wetland area requires a special exception. Point 2, the use will not create undue traffic or impair pedestrian safety. Other than a little bit of temporary crossing work at Manchester and Tinker, there really is no significant impacts to public ways, and those improvements will be short-term. The applicant and their contractor will take any and all precautions to ensure pedestrian safety through these construction areas. Special exception point 3 will not overburden or overload any public water, drainage, or city sewer system. My testimony is no, that is not the case. We will not adversely impact any municipal system. The project is really warranted in order to provide pressure and storage and volume to the northern part and the northwestern part of Nashua during the reconstruction of the Kessler Farm tank. And of course, you know you're getting old when I was part of the site plan for the Kessler Farm tank back 30 years ago, and now they're tearing it down, so I'm dating myself. So point 4 is any special regulations set forth in the code need to be addressed. And there are 9 points, as Attorney Prunier referenced earlier. All have been addressed, and again, in the application, but I'm gonna give you some key elements that I think apply to our request. Yes, the project is necessary to provide service to customers during construction of the tank. Yes, Pennachuck has selected the least damaging route to keep it off pavement, to minimize traffic impacts. 3, there are no wetlands being impacted. These are buffer impacts. They're temporary in nature, return ground to existing grade and condition. 3, no new impervious surfaces are being created, no new stormwater practices. Yes, the overall benefit of this infrastructure project does outweigh these temporary impacts. And then lastly, we have received Conservation Commission approval, a positive recommendation for the project. They do cite 2 conditions having to do with essentially having staff validate ownership recognition of the project, which we have submitted some correspondence to that effect. And so that is special regulations number 4. Lastly, number 5, the requested use will not impair or be out of character with the neighborhood. The work does not affect the neighborhood in the sense of building a building or bringing in a contrary use. It's an underground utility improvement, and the post-construction conditions will essentially be the same as the pre-construction. So I see that I did well with time. I know it's a lot of information. I know the packet has quite a lot of technical information about all these points, but I'd be happy to answer questions from the board or from the public.
So can you just speak to the water supply protection special exceptions?
So the water supply protection ordinance was written in the 90s essentially to regulate uses within different zones. There's a 300-foot zone, which is really those critical areas around the supply ponds. And then there's a 150-foot zone for wetlands that are not the supply ponds or Pennachuck Brook, but they're tributary to that. And what the code, Mr. Chairman, says is that you're allowed to do work in those zones as long as you meet certain conditions. And those conditions are that the use is allowed in the zone, which it is. It cannot be reasonably avoided, which in this case it can't. That you need Concom approval, which we've obtained. That there's no increase in pavement, which there isn't. And that if there was, that stormwater controls are met. And we have no new stormwater controls because we have no new pavement. So that's how I believe we address 190-24. Yep.
So your testimony is that you comply
Correct.
with this, with all 3 of the applications?
Correct.
All right,
Thank you.
And then, just for the record, I won't read the whole letter, but there is a letter from the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services that was addressed to Mr. Tedder of Pennachuck Waterworks, and basically granting the required approval to do the work that is requested.
Thank you.
Is there any questions for the applicant? Mr. Courier?
Just curious if you could clarify how far off Manchester Street the work is. I think there's like a chain link fence there now. Is it going to be?
There is, and that defines the Pennachuck property. The work will be on the Pennachuck side of that fence. We hope to keep that fence. So there'll be a swath, Mr. Courier, cut on the Pennachuck property along that route. I think I said, I don't know, 1,800 feet or so up to Tinker Road, yeah.
And would that be revegetated or just let as is or kept?
Yeah, I think, we return to grade and then condition, obviously loamed and seeded, and I don't really think Pennachuck will look to plant trees over that, but the ground cover will be a conservation-type mix, no maintenance, and we'll just go wild, yes.
And then the other question is on the Concom letter about the consent letters. Seems to me there might have been only one parcel of land that was privately owned, the Auto John Company, out of all this project.
Yeah.
That was the only thing I saw in the application. I was just curious if it was down to that one.
Yeah, it was auto, and of course, the city of Nashua owns the lands too.
Oh,
And
okay.
so we're currently in the process of negotiating, Pennachuck is negotiating the easements with Attorney Bolton, and once the easement language is agreed upon, I believe they will take it to the Board of Aldermen for an approval of the action. Yeah.
All right, thanks. I'm all set.
Mr. Lionel?
I don't know, maybe 6, 7 years ago, there was water main construction farther along Manchester Street into Merrimack. Is it going to look similar to that in terms of digging up along the side, laying the pipe, and then covering it all up?
I think that was closer to Manchester Street, if I'm not mistaken. You're talking about in the Merrimack section of it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think my answer will be yes, but I think we're going to be further off pavement than we were in Manchester, yeah. In Merrimack, I'm sorry.
At the time, I was working in the building where Pennachuck
Sure.
is headquarters, and it was interesting to look at, but it was not much disturbance to traffic.
Yeah.
Any other questions for the applicant?
Okay, thank
Very
you.
much. Does anybody else in the audience like to speak in favor of this application? Seeing none. Anybody with questions, concerns, or opposition to this application? Come on up, give us your name and address, please.
My name's Sean Martin. I live at 236 Manchester Street. And I was just curious about what the traffic implications would be, because that road gets really busy in the morning and at 5 o'clock. And the other question I had is, was there any studies done? The last time there was some bridge work done up at the Merrimack Bridge, there was an eagle nest or something, and the project was extensive, and the road was shut down for a long period of time. So I was just curious if any of those studies were done. So mainly traffic is what it was, a bit of traffic.
We'll have somebody come back up and answer that for you.
Okay.
Do you have anything else?
No, that was it.
Any questions for
No.
this person? No?
No.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll get those answered. Anybody else with questions, concerns, or opposition with this application? Okay, seeing none, if you mind, come on back up and address the questions that,
Your name again, sir? I'm sorry.
Sean Martin.
Mr. Martin, okay. Thank you. I usually write that down, but, yeah, I think, as I stated in the testimony, one of the reasons we're getting off pavement is to not obstruct Manchester Street from Pennachuck up to Tinker Road. It's about 1,800 feet of 24-inch water main. They would probably,
if you don't mind just picking up the mic maybe. so
yeah,
they can pick
they
up.
would probably get, maybe 100 feet to 150 feet of water main a day. So into 1,800 feet is what, 12 days? So that's 12 days we're not ripping it up and then putting it back and paving and traffic control. So I think that's probably the key thing, getting off pavement for traffic. With respect to the Eagle's Nest, I haven't heard anything. These are mapped wetlands. They're mapped by certified wetland scientists. One of the gentlemen is also a wildlife biologist. We were aware of the eagle issue a few years ago up at that bridge, but I hope they're back because that's a pretty spot right there, at the water. But we haven't seen anything, and we hope to be as least disruptive as possible in that swath going up Manchester Street.
Any questions, Mr. Lino?
Not really a question, but my comment is that Eagle's Nest was far beyond the limit of where
Yeah.
they're doing this work. It was at the bridge.
Probably 1,200 feet as the eagle flies. Yeah, about 1,200 feet, yeah.
Mr. Courier?
I just wanted to clarify that this proposed work on Manchester Street, it doesn't seem like it's gonna close off the street at all. Whereas, there was like this kind of bad memory of when that
Yeah.
bridge was rebuilt, where that was closed for a long time, and it
Yeah.
was a big
There-
hassle.
There is a crossing up at Manchester and Tinker, but that's it might be at its worst anywhere from 50 to 100 feet of crossing versus working almost 2,000 feet in the road. So it's a much shorter duration and much easier to traffic control that shorter distance than the big run up the street. Yep.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Sir, per our zoning bylaws, you do have an opportunity to come back if you'd like, or you can rest. You can,
I'd like to rest,
Okay, okay.
thanks for listening to the question.
all right. Okay, thank you. With that, I will close cases 2, 3, and 4, and open up the public, not close, I will close the public hearing for cases 2, 3, and 4. I'll open the public meeting for cases 2, 3, and 4. And as I said before, once we get to the point where we are ready to make motions, we'll make those motions separately for the record. Okay? Mr. Curry?
I think that the 3 applications meet the criteria as testified by Mr. Petropoulos. I'm good with it. I think, the least damaging route is proposed. Yes, it's off the street, but environmentally, it's still far from the wetland. So I also appreciate the letter from DES. I didn't realize that land was purchased, you might say, with a grant, with those easement restrictions on it. But they provide their endorsement of this project, because essentially it'll return to its existing condition once the pipe is put in. So I'm good with it as is presented. I'm glad that Mr. Petropoulos has outlived his first design. I think time will tell whether he outlives this concrete design.
All right, thank you. Mr. Lino?
I concur with Mr. Courier. I sort of lived through the previous construction farther along Manchester Street and saw the care that they took to minimize disruption and also to restore what they had disturbed. So I'm confident that they will do as equally a good job here.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I concur on supporting the applications, and I think they're well done and meet the criteria.
I also agree.
I concur. I wondered about school buses, but Mr. Metropolis answered that, and it's not really going to be in the road, so I'm good with it.
Would anybody like to hazard a motion?
Well, how about each of us do one motion? Or are they all basically all the same? Okay, we'll start, I'll start with this one.
So he's gonna do case number 2.
2.
All right, he's just gonna do case number 2.
Yeah.
Okay?
All right, I'd like to make a motion on behalf of owner Pennachuck Waterworks, care of John Boisvert, professional engineer, address is 206 Concord Street in Nashua. Assume that's Nashua. Description, Pennachuck Waterworks, sheet 52, lot 118, requesting special exception from Land Use Code, section 19024 F5, to allow a temporary wetland buffer impact within the 150-foot associated water body buffer for a water main construction. This is in the R18 zone. This is listed in the table of uses. We have had testimony that it will not create undue traffic congestion or unduly impair pedestrian safety. We've had testimony that it will not overload. In fact, will have no real effect on public water, drainage, sewer, or other municipal systems. All of the special regulations are fulfilled. We have testimony on that. And this is just a temporary disturbance, so at the end of the project, there will be no effect on the neighborhood detrimental to health, morals, or welfare of the residents. All of the special conditions special exception conditions from 19024F5 are said to be met, and therefore I make a motion to approve this special exception.
Seconded by Mr. Courier. I think there may be, yes, so any discussion?
Do we need to add those stipulations from
So
the
you
Conservation
suggest that you
Commission?
amend it to add the wetland special conditions?
Yes.
And then the conservation letter. Did you get that?
Oh, that's this one. Well, this one is for the airport. This is,
For the third case.
that's for the third case
Case
number.
five.
There is a letter for the second
Yeah.
case. I think it's
There's
the
a
same date,
Concom letter
for the same date.
3 of them.
Right.
That's this one.
Yeah. Okay. So amend the motion to include the stipulations from the City Conservation Commission, to provide consent letters from impacted property owners, and to verify any proposed temporary waterline impacts verify that they meet easement requirements of parcels acquired under the state LCHIP program or any other similar program.
I make a second to the amendment on the motion.
So second amendment, Mr. Courier. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? It's 5-0. That motion passes. Are you all set? Okay. We're ready for case number 3. Now we'll make a motion for case number 3. Mr. Courier.
Okay, I'll make a motion. This is case number 3. Again, the same owner, Pennachuck Waterworks, care of John Beauvais, professional engineer. And this project, or this application, is the land along Tinker Road. And again, it's Pennachuck Waterworks is requesting a exception from Land Use Code 190-24, paragraph F, subparagraph 5, to allow a temporary wetland buffer impact within the 150-foot associated water body buffer, and to work within the 75-foot prime wetland buffer. Both of these buffers are for a water proposed encroachment into the buffer is for an water main construction. As I just mentioned, both these requests are listed in the table of uses. The board finds it'll not create undue traffic congestion or unduly impair pedestrian safety. This portion of the project will be done off of Tinker Road, so the disruption to Tinker Road, I think the board finds will be minimal. I think the board finds it'll not overload public water, drainage, sewer, or other municipal system. In fact, the whole purpose of this project is to improve the public water supply. Special regulations for this portion of the project. There's the Water Supply Protection District Special Exception Conditions. There's 5 by the written application and oral testimony. Those 5 are met by this application. And there's also the 9 wetland special conditions that in the written application, and again affirmed by testimony this evening, those 9 conditions are met. And finally, the 5th special exception criteria is will not impair the integrity or be out of character with the neighborhood or be detrimental to the health, morals, or welfare of the residents. This is a temporary impact. I think the board finds it that once completed, the area will be returned to the existing condition it's in and just let the natural vegetation do what it does. As part of this motion, I also would like to incorporate the March 6, 2019 approval letter from the Conservation Commission, in which the applicant has testified that they will meet the two stipulations regarding consent letters and proposed temporary waterline impacts. So I would, and also I'd like to incorporate the record of the Conservation Commission deliberations, which resulted in that March 6 affirmative recommendation. So with that, I make a motion to approve the project as presented tonight.
Seconded by Mr. Lionel. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? That's 5-0. That motion passes. Anybody like to hazard another motion? Mr.
There
Curran?
we go, keep it going. You want to jump in?
Oh, I'll do it, sure.
All
why
right,
not?
here he goes.
Okay, I hope I don't miss anything. Okay, I'd like to make a motion on behalf of City of Nashua and Auto John Packaging Boston, address 100 Northwest Boulevard, Land Northwest Boulevard, and Land Deerwood Drive. Sheet H, lots 18, 290, 488, 577, and 634, requesting the following special exceptions. 1, from Land Use Code Section 190-24F5, to allow a temporary wetland buffer impact within the 150-foot associated water body buffer, and 2, from Land Use Code Section 190-115B, to work within the 75-foot prime wetland buffer and the 40-foot other wetland buffer, all requests to allow for a water main construction. This is listed in the table of uses. We have testimony that it will not create undue traffic congestion or unduly impair pedestrian safety. We have testimony that it will not overload public water, drainage, sewer, or other municipal systems. In fact, this will improve public water systems and won't have effects on these other systems. All of the special regulations are fulfilled, and it will not impair the integrity or be out of character with the neighborhood. When the work is done, there will be no effect whatsoever. There are 5 special conditions for the Water Supply Protection District. We have testimony that those are met. We have the testimony that the wetland special conditions, 9 of those are met. And we have a letter from the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services with a description of the work and stipulation as to what should be done when the work is completed. And I'm assuming that the applicant agrees to do all of these things. And I'm seeing a nod yes. Have I missed anything? I don't think so. There's a Concom, there should also be a letter from the City Conservation Commission. Where is that? Oh, it's the same letter of understanding. Here we are, okay. Again, provide consent letters from impacted property owners and to verify any proposed temporary water line impacts, that they meet any easement requirements of parcels acquired under the state of New Hampshire LCHIP program or any similar program. So with all of that, I make a motion to approve this special exception.
Seconded by Mr. Courier. Any discussion? All in favor? That's 5-0. That motion passes. Congratulations. All your motions pass. So I will close cases 2, 3, and 4. And we'll give just a minute for Mr. Metropolis to clean up and move on. We all set to keep going? Okay, we'll open case number 5. Case number 5 is owner Woodlands at National Realty Trust, 3 Sapling Circle. Description is as follows. Woodlands at National Realty Trust, care of Gilbert C. Campbell, trustee owner, 3 Sapling Circle, Sheet A, Lot 27, requesting special exception for Land Use Code, Section 190-112, to work within a 40-foot other wetland buffer to replace an existing 8-foot by 20-foot steel box trailer with a 14-foot by 20-foot wooden shed and to replace a 200-square-foot riprap apron with fresh stone and a large apron by 168 square feet. This is in the RC district. Welcome. Can you have your name and address, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, my name is Mark Jacobs. I'm a certified wetland scientist and certified soil scientist here in New Hampshire. I'll be representing Woodlands at Nashua this evening. Also with me are Joseph Sousa. He's the chief of maintenance for the complex. Michael Granger, who's the engineer and surveyor of record, is also with me this evening, as is attorney John Bisson. Let's see, the Woodlands at Nashua is a it's a complex of 9 multi-unit apartment buildings situated on Sapling Circle, which comes off of Spitbrook Road. It involves approximately 21 acres of property. This is the overall site plan from back in the 1970s when the project was constructed. The approximate area of interest, just to put you in context of the entire site, is roughly this area. I also have a blow-up plan as well, which is part of your package that you have this evening. The application involves, as the chairman stated, one of your other wetlands greater than 9,000 square feet, which involves a 40-foot wetland buffer. The work that we're asking for is confined to the buffer zone. There will be no direct wetland impacts, and no trees have been or will be removed for this project. It also does not involve any of your primary or critical wetlands. The applicant wishes to remove an existing 8-foot by 20-foot steel box trailer, which currently sits directly on the land surface, and replace it with a 14 by 20-foot wooden prefab shed prepared by Reed's Ferry, which, by the way, I have a depiction of the shed that I can share with the board if you'd like to see that, a picture of that shed. That shed is 280 square feet, so that would be a net increase in surface area, if you will, of 120 square feet. But the shed is intended to sit, for all intents and purposes, on the exact same spot as the existing steel trailer, which I've done some aerial photograph interpretation, and the shed, the steel box trailer that's currently there has existed in one form and another at least back to 2001. This shed will sit on sonotubes, so it will not be directly on the ground, so there'll actually be a decrease in impervious surface, if you will, of 160 square feet associated with the project. Additionally, the project is intending to memorialize a riprap apron that was discovered when the parking areas for Building 9 were resurfaced in 2017. As part of that work, they discovered a riprap apron that had long since silted in and grown over with grasses, so nobody really even knew it was there. And we estimate that was approximately 200 square feet originally, but they, in the process of replacing it, they enlarged it to 368 square feet, so they added an additional 168 square feet of riprap. But the riprap apron helps to decrease the flow of the runoff coming off the parking area. It protects the downstream wetlands areas from erosion and sedimentation. So that's a good thing. We met with the Nashua Conservation Commission on March 5th. They issued a letter lending their blessing to the project with the stipulation that we don't store any hazardous materials in the shed, and we were happy to agree to that stipulation. I believe I included a copy of that letter in your package. I won't go through the special exception, wetland special exception, the 9 criteria, unless you would like me to. I addressed them pretty thoroughly, I thought, in the application. I can speak to the 5 criteria about the use. It's not being prohibited. the project won't change traffic patterns, congestion, or safety at all, certainly. The board should also know that this shed will only be for the use of the apartment complex. The tenants will not have any access to the shed. The shed has no utilities, water, sewer, or similar, so it will have no impact on municipal utilities or drainage. We think it will actually be a slight improvement in the drainage because, again, currently the steel box trailer sits on the ground surface, and this shed will be elevated slightly, so drainage can infiltrate the ground beneath the shed after this work is done. The shed won't impair the integrity of the area. As you can see, it's pretty centrally located in the project. The only people who will be able to view the shed are the tenants of the apartment complex. None of the abutting properties can view the shed in this location. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
So what brought you here was the fact that it was noticed that the riprap apron had been, obviously it was fresh, so somebody probably saw that, and then it was enlarged. So in your estimation, the enlargement of the apron, there's no detrimental effect, in your professional opinion,
Correct.
as compared to what it was originally sized at?
Correct. And let me clarify that, if I may, and I apologize if I didn't explain that clearly. The riprap apron work was done in 2017 when they resurfaced the parking lot. It was approximately a year later that Mr. Sousa approached the planning department about a building permit for the shed. And when staff from the city came out to view the location for the shed, they viewed the riprap apron, and that's, so we basically, we're proposing some work that hasn't been done and trying to memorialize, if you will, or bring into the light the work that was already done, and that would be the riprap apron. I hope that helps clarify that.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? Mr. Correa?
The runoff from the parking lot, when it goes through the apron and into that area, is that draining somewhere, or is that basically a detention pond? It was unclear to me where the stormwater runoff goes once it makes its way down the apron.
Directly to the wetland, as has always been the case since the project was approved and constructed. There's been no change in the drainage pattern.
And does that drain off-site, or is that just infiltrate? Is that just kind of like a pond that doesn't have an outlet?
My apologies, I did not chase the wetland off-site, if you will, to see where it drains, but my impression, based on my observations, having delineated this edge of the boundary in this area, is that eventually, yes, this wetland is largely stagnant, and there's a lot of infiltration of groundwater taking place at that location. But I couldn't say that with 100% certainty because I didn't chase the wetland to any off-site, to observe any off-site drainage.
Okay, thank you.
And just one other question, just for my knowledge. Is there, I'm familiar with riprap aprons, but is there anything different in construction today than years ago that would kind of slow it down or prevent any of this overburden of the silt, the covering up of the riprap apron?
Nowadays, it's commonplace to have what's called a stormwater operations and management plan that might involve, for something like this, a street sweeping protocol or program, so that once or twice a year impervious surfaces are swept, and in so doing it keeps the sands and the silts from plugging up components of the drainage system. So yes, that's something that was not common in the past, but it's much more common these days.
I was just curious. Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else that'd like to speak in favor of this application? Seeing none. Anybody with questions, concerns, or opposition with this application? Okay, seeing none, I will close the public hearing and open the public meeting. I'm familiar with the Woodlands, I mean, we all drive by that probably 100 times, and I've never really been down in the back there, so I viewed the property. You know, it appears that what they're asking for is reasonable. The work, obviously, I had read this is after the fact, and I thought they had done something really huge, but it, you know, wasn't really, I guess, from the naked eye, I guess, unless you do the square footage, you would, I looked at it and say, oh, that looks like that was done purposely and belongs there, so I'm good with that. I was more concerned about, you know, whether or not there was any negative impacts to the wetlands or the buffers area. So the shed, I'm okay with that. It's gonna look way better than the proposed shed, Reed's Ferry. We're all familiar with Reed's Ferry shed, so that's South Shed. So I think we've seen enough of those that I don't need to see a picture, and I'm confident that it's gonna be an improvement upon what's, you know, the current box storage. So I'm in favor of the application as it stands. Story.
I agree with your testimony there, and yes, I've been by it countless times, but here's an excuse to go in and look around. And I agree, I think the proposed shed is gonna look way better and be, you know, less, you know, more infiltration with it there because it's up on sonotubes. And I was a little concerned with the riprap like you were, but really what's happening here is there's been no change of the parking lot runoff since the site was built. It's all running off as it was, and, you know, per the testimony, the larger riprap is not detrimental to the water quality. So you know, I feel comfortable understanding the history of it because it was a little unclear from the written application, but I'm okay with that. So I'm as well okay with this application. I think it meets all the criteria.
All right. Any other discussion? No? Okay. Anybody want to hazard a motion, or Mr. Currier?
Make a motion on behalf of the Woodlands at Nashua Realty Trust. The address is 3 Sapling Circle. And again, the request is an exception from Land Use Code 190-112, and that's to work within a 40-foot other wetland buffer to replace an 8-foot by 20-foot steel box with a 14 by 20-foot wooden shed, and to replace a 200-square-foot riprap apron with a fresh stone apron and enlarge the apron by 168 square feet. As I just mentioned, this is listed in the table of uses. These two projects will not create undue traffic congestion or unduly impair pedestrian safety. I think the board finds will have no impact on traffic or pedestrian safety. I think the board finds it will not overload public water drainage or sewer or other municipal systems. By testimony, this is really only an impact to the drainage system, and it's basically memorializing a drainage system which was cleaned out and improved in 2017. The 9 special regulations in our written application and by testimony tonight are fulfilled. I think the board finds it will not impair the integrity or be out of character with the neighborhood. I think the board finds it might be more in character with the neighborhood to have a nice-looking new wooden shed versus a steel box. So I think the 5 special exception criteria are met, and I make a motion. I would also like to bring into the record the March 6th approval, or I should say favorable recommendation from the Nashua Conservation Commission. There is one stipulation on that the applicant has testified they will adhere to, which is no storage of hazardous materials in the proposed shed. Also like to attach to this record the record of the Conservation Commission deliberation on that favorable recommendation. And with that, I make a motion to approve as presented.
Seconded by Mr. Lionel. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? That's 5-0. Motion carries. Congratulations. Just be aware, again, there's always that window of appeal, but unlikely in this case.
Thank you for your time.
Right. Is everybody still all set to keep going? You good? So with that, I'll close case number 5 and open case number 6. Case number 6 is GMAC Properties LLC, 41 Caldwell Road. Description is GMAC Properties LLC, owner 41 Caldwell Road, sheet 105, lot 23. Requesting a variance from Land Use Code, section 190-16, table 16-3, for a minimum land area, 12,445 square feet required. 9,375 square feet proposed to convert a single-family dwelling unit into a two-family dwelling unit. It's in the RB zoning district. We'll let you get set up. Are you okay, sir? Okay.
Close one. Timer's still ready.
Keeps on ticking, yep.
Welcome, sir. You give us your name and address, please?
Sure. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, my name is Chad Brannon. I'm a civil engineer with Fieldstone Land Consultants, and I'll be representing GMAC Properties this evening. We are before you tonight requesting a variance for the development of parcel 105-23 into a two-family residential structure. The subject property has a physical address of 41 Caldwell Road and is located approximately 200 feet south of the intersection of Anvil Drive on the west side of Caldwell Road. The property consists of .215 acres of land, or 9,375 square feet, and is currently occupied by a single-family residential house with associated site improvements. Zoning for the property is urban residence, RB, which has a minimum lot requirements of 6,000 square feet for a single-family home, or 12,445 square feet for a duplex structure with 50 feet of road frontage. My client is proposing to develop the property into a duplex unit. This will consist of constructing an addition off the end of the existing house on the property, and as depicted on the architectural plans that we did include with the submission package. And I do have a copy of those plans if you would like me to put them up on the board. The existing lot size, as described, is 9,375 square feet, so this does require a variance, as we missed the lot size requirement by approximately 3,070 square feet. This area of the city is primarily developed into duplex housing, and what I mean by that is the west side of Caldwell Road consists of all duplex-style housing, with the exception of 2 lots along the entire length of Caldwell Road in the vicinity of the project. All of the lots on Forge Drive and Anvil Drive behind the subject parcel are also developed into duplex style homes. In our evaluation of the surrounding properties, we found that this proposal is in harmony with the surroundings. This is demonstrated with the zoning exhibit plan that we have before you this evening. This plan does show that all of the lots west of Caldwell Road are currently developed with duplex units, and that all of these lots are smaller in area than the subject property. Taking a closer look at that, the lots on Forge Drive behind the subject property are all 9,000 square feet in size, and that is shown on the plan that I have on the board this evening. Basically, the yellow hatched area represents all of the duplex lots or two-family residential lots in the surrounding the existing parcel. The lots on Caldwell Road range in size from 6,100 square feet to 6,400 square feet around the property. So given that the subject property is 9,375 square feet, we believe that this proposal is in harmony with the surroundings. And what I will say is, obviously in the process of constructing a duplex unit, there will be some additional impervious cover that we would be proposing on the subject property. And as such, we are planning on incorporating some stormwater mitigation in terms of providing for some infiltration on site. So we would essentially take the roof runoff and the additional runoff from the driveway and route that into an infiltration basin on the property, like a leaching basin. which is pretty common practice on what we do on a lot of the lots of this nature in the city. With this said, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to go through the 5 criteria for the variance application or answer any questions that the board may have at this time.
Mr. Lionel.
When I first looked at this, I was not really thrilled, and then I started doing some calculations, and as you said, almost all of the surrounding lots are smaller than what the code would require and are duplexes. And as you pointed out, the new lot, because you went before the planning commission and subdivided the previous lot that had been 15,500 square feet. This new lot, 10523, is bigger than pretty much all of the other ones around. So it seems in character. I think, I see there was lots of a question about the jog in the property line, but that's not really our concern. Is the intention to develop the new 105, 164 lot?
It is. The plan at this time is to do a single-family lot, or home on that lot. What kind of led to this direction is when we did the subdivision of this property, what that yielded is the existing residential structure on the lot that we're before you tonight on is really favoring the left-hand side of the property that it now sits on. And when you look at the surrounding lots, it sets up quite conducively for a duplex unit, and frankly is very consistent with the surroundings. So we're proposing a duplex-style home here, and it's anticipated that this would be a single-family lot. That one is 6,000 square feet in size.
Yeah, it's what I calculated as I have 6,800, but maybe 6,125, excuse me.
Yeah, it's just over
Yeah,
6,000.
And that would qualify under the zoning for single family. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Courier.
Just what are the approximate lot sizes of the houses across the street from your proposal?
Sure.
Across Caldwell Road, rather?
So across the road, I believe, is the RA zone. It's not the same zone, so those are larger lots. And I think they range in size of about 25,000 to 30,000 square feet, if I remember correctly. But it's a different zone on the other side of the road, I do believe.
Guess I'll just turn to Mr. Falk and say, is the zone line in the middle of Caldwell Road then?
I was looking at something else. I believe it is what the applicant has stated. I don't have a zoning map with me, but I believe it is different zoning on that side of the street.
Okay.
And further south on Caldwell Road, there is multifamily housing on the south side of the street, as well as, I believe, a couple duplex structures. So there is consistent housing on that side, but certainly along the frontage of this property, and I would say on average, along the length of Caldwell Road, the majority of the homes are single-family on the, it would be the east side of Caldwell Road.
I'm familiar with the area, and you're correct. It is primarily all duplexes. What makes this a little different is the garages. There is, down the street, I'm trying to remember the name of it, swings back up towards the park. There's, side street was a couple of duplexes which had some garages added to it, but on Forge Drive in Caldwell, I don't recall any units with garages. And so was there any thought about what other options there were with this? Or is this was it right here?
Well, I think you're correct. I actually lived on Caldwell Road at one time, many years ago. So I think that you are correct that the majority of the homes do not have garages at all. They have driveways in the front or on the sides of the units. I think what makes sense with this particular lot is that we can locate the driveway centrally and the garages are in between the units, then it offers good buffering to the future tenants, hopefully, on this property, but also offers some additional buffering to the neighboring properties because the majority of the activity would be central on the proposed lot. Also, the fact that, this property would offer garages is somewhat unique and I think offers some diversity in housing or opportunity in that area. But I would have to defer to my client as far as if there's options to remove the garages or not. The plan at this time is to have them, and I think the architectural rendering is quite nice. But is it safe to say you would be opposed to the garage, or is that a concern?
I'm just, I just was looking at with the impact on the lot and the size, and you are right. I mean, there are lots that are a little smaller than that have duplexes on them. Obviously they put them in sideways. Is that the ideal thing? That's whatever, it's pre-existing. I just didn't know, again, as we move along here, whether or not there was just any other thought about what else could have it been, and whether or not, that would impact anybody's decision on looking at this as far as the impact to the lot and to the surrounding neighborhood. You know what I'm saying? So, it's interesting that, as you know, right, some of those were put in sideways and they favor one side of the lot, so obviously they're hugging one side of the lot and leaving another side opening, where in this case here, I mean, there is some duplexes there that are pretty close to each side of the property lines, but I was just, it was more of a kind of a curiosity and, kind of how did we end up at this spot? But I think you answered that, and where you're trying to put a duplex in that has a garage, which is unique and obviously would stand out as something that, I think, again, we're not here for financial, decision-making, but obviously would be something that would be beneficial to the sale or rental of that property, whatever is planned for it, so.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions,
If I could
Mr. Currier?
just touch on that just a little bit
okay.
more, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
I think one of the features here that contemplates the garage, and as well as we have an existing house here that faces the street, and we're trying to create some symmetry with an existing house, but connecting them with a garage is a good architectural solution to roof lines and so on. So I think that kind of that comes into play as well with the design of what fits the property best. Just thought I would offer that as well.
Thank you very much, I appreciate that. Currier?
Just to your point, just hypothetically, if, say there weren't garages and things were skinny down, I think the request would still remain exactly the same though, right? Because
it is, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, just, because at first I thought, if there weren't garages, would there be less of an incursion? But there'd be no delta in that.
We're not dealing with setbacks here.
No, I understand that. It was more towards, again, there may be, again, we don't know who's here to testify, and I was just curious as to whether or not there was any other thought, and sometimes it's, we deal a lot with what perception is, right? Sometimes with applications, and my perception was this is different than anything else on that street. And not that I'm opposed to it or in favor, I was just asking a question on whether or not, visually sometimes something may be, it's the same application, but they look like it's less intrusive, right? We've talked about that. Sometimes we look at applications where there's something's being done, but because you don't really see it or something, doesn't mean it's not there, it just means it's not really drawing your attention to it. So, and it's just a comment, and maybe more, this is more for the discussion of the public meeting, but it was just kind of trying to get the applicant to kind of maybe speak to whether or not there was any other considerations to that. Mr. Currier?
Yeah, one other question. I was just curious, the structure there, looks like it might be the oldest one on the street. When was that existing house built?
That is a great question. I don't know if I have the tax card with me.
It's a turn of the 20th century for sure.
It didn't look like a concrete foundation.
No.
It looked
It's
like
I think it's a block foundation,
yeah.
but I don't have that exact date, I'm sorry.
And then, the other question is how long has your client owned the property?
How long have you owned the property? 9 months.
Okay.
Any other questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you. Do you have anything else?
I did, if you wanted me to go through the criteria, I'd be happy to go through that, but
It's up to anybody else, but I think I'm pretty satisfied with
I
that.
actually would like to
Would you?
tick
Okay.
through the criteria, yeah.
okay. Number one, granting of the requested variance will not be contrary to the public interest. In general, the subject property consists of the subject property consists of, in general, the surrounding properties to the subject property consist of two-family or duplex-style units with the exception of single-family homes on the east side of Codwell Road. The proposed use and density for this property will therefore be consistent with the surroundings, which is supported with the plan that we have before you this evening. This proposal will therefore not have a negative impact on the neighborhood, public health, safety, welfare, or otherwise injure public rights. Number two, and certainly interrupt if you have any questions, please. Number two, the proposed use will observe the spirit of the ordinance because this proposal will consist of renovating the existing structure on the subject property. The proposal is consistent with the surrounding areas and the surrounding properties and will thereby observe the spirit of the ordinance. And again, we talked about, how this property is 9,375 square feet in size. It's actually the largest property in the neighborhood, even with the subdivision. If you take a look at the plan that we have before you this evening, the next largest lot are lots located on Forge Drive behind the subject property, and those consist of 9,000 square feet in size. We believe that the lot size requirements are really contemplated to provide for adequate separation and buffering between properties and to ensure that single-family and two-family homes have adequate separation. With this project, we have essentially duplex-style homes surrounding the development with the exception of across the road on Codwell Road. So we do believe that again, we are consistent and in harmony with the neighborhood. And as such, this project will not threaten the public health, safety, or welfare, or otherwise injure the public rights. Number three, substantial justice would be done to the property owner by granting the variance. Granting this variance would allow the property owner to improve the subject parcel into a property in harmony with the surroundings and market the property as 2 units. This proposal will not cause harm to the general public or other individuals, and therefore substantial justice would be done to the property owner by granting this variance. Number 4, the proposed use will not diminish the values of surrounding properties. Very similar, the proposed use is consistent and compatible with the surrounding uses. The proposed lot size is larger than the surrounding lots, so we're providing ample separation and buffers to the neighboring properties. We will therefore not diminish the surrounding property values, and our experience has been that new construction oftentimes has positive impacts on adjacent land values. So given this, we believe this proposal would potentially have positive impacts to the surrounding property values and again be consistent with the surroundings. And then number 5, special conditions exists such that literal enforcement of the ordinance results in unnecessary hardship. Again, the plan that we have before you this evening shows the surrounding densities or lot sizes in proximity to the proposed parcels. When you take a close look at this plan, you can see that this proposal is consistent with the surroundings and will therefore not alter the essential character of the neighborhood. The subject property does have special conditions as it is the largest lot in the neighborhood, and developing it into a duplex would not make the development any more dense or create any additional density that would have a negative impact on the surrounding areas, meaning that, again, even with the duplex lot being developed, we would still have the largest lot in the neighborhood, and therefore be consistent, again, with the spirit and intent of the ordinance, as well as be in harmony with the surroundings. Literal enforcement of the ordinance would restrict my client's ability to develop the property in harmony with its surroundings, which would result in an unnecessary hardship. When we evaluate the surrounding uses and densities, we do believe this proposal to be fair and reasonable. And I think, when you take a look at a single-family home, especially one, that we talked about that is relatively old, there are renovations that need to be contemplated, to the home itself. So these improvements will bring this property, will be an upgrade to the property and an upgrade to the surroundings. So we think the placement of the house on the lot is also a special condition, as well as the geometry and size of the lot. And for those reasons, we are respectfully requesting a variance for this particular application.
Mr. Courier?
Well, I guess I appreciate that. Maybe it's really the last criteria that I was struggling a bit with about, the unnecessary hardship, in that, it seems to be a perfectly fine functioning single-family home for 100+ years. And I would think that the current owner knows that when he's walking into it, or she's walking into it. And so I guess I just struggle with having an unnecessary hardship with the underlying zoning when it's served that way all these years. So maybe you could help me get over that hurdle a little, because I'm bumping up against it.
Well, I think that, when we went through the subdivision process for this project, and my client was evaluating, this lot in kind of really the geometry and how it's situated with all of the surroundings. This lot, when you take a look at, I'm not an appraiser, but when you take a look at the surrounding properties, it's really out of character. It's a large lot that's single family home, and I think that when you start looking at the surroundings and you start looking at how this area in the city has been developed, it's a reasonable request to develop this property into a duplex lot. But I also think that the surroundings do create hardship. The fact that where the home is situated and how that neighborhood is set up creates some hardship from a marketability standpoint that my client has been contemplating since looking at the home and trying to determine the best way to frankly sell this property or invest in the property. And the decision was that a duplex would be the most reasonable, primarily because of the surroundings. So this almost looks like spot zoning when you start taking a look at the surrounding areas and the fact that this is the only single-family structure right now on that street.
All right, thanks.
Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you. Anybody else in the audience that'd like to speak in favor of this application? Seeing none. Anybody with questions, concerns, or opposition to this application? Okay, come on up one at a time. Ma'am, if you could just give us your name and address, please, that would be appreciated.
Good evening, gentlemen. My name is Maura Parnan. My husband Wayne is also here. We own the property.
Hold on, would you mind pulling that microphone down? If you can't, we'll take care of that.
Sure.
All right, and can you just state your name again for the record?
Well, it kind of fell.
Oh, I'm sorry, I silenced it.
That's all right. Take your time.
I silenced the rest of it. It's a 2-hour reminder. I had surgery.
You give your name and last name again, just for spelling, just so we have it for the record. Thank you.
Maura Parnan, Parnin.
Thank you. And your address, ma'am?
We own 47 A and B Caldwell.
So to the left of the subject property, to the left of the new lot that was created.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So we own that lot, and we think it's a lovely neighborhood. And we're here we know that there would be other people here tonight, but many of them are still away. So that we came along with some, and we've talked to other neighbors also. So basically, apparently 41 Caldwell Road was originally on a qualifying lot of 15,507 square feet, but it no longer qualifies as a two-family lot under the current zoning since it's been reduced to 9,375 square feet. The previous zoning in the 1960s, when the area was developed, allowed for duplexes of much smaller size. However, that zoning has changed. Okay, so the 12,445 square foot lot is required, and the lot is 9,375 square feet, which is 3,070 square feet less than required, which is a 25% reduction in size. Okay, and we feel that that's not in keeping with the spirit of the zoning, which really is trying to make larger spaces for people to dwell in rather than smaller. So basically, we feel that the generally accepted reason for zoning laws is to promote safety, health, and well-being, and to hopefully alleviate congestion, provide open space and cleaner air, and to better the quality of life. And to prevent the overcrowding that existed in the early 1900s in many cities. Since Caldwell Road is a narrow road with parking on only one side, it is often used as a shortcut between Lake Street and Lund Road. It's a busy street, it can be. Okay. Current duplexes allow parking for 4 cars, but often park 5 or more cars on very small lots. Back in the 60s, many people didn't have 2 cars apiece, but now almost everyone has at least 2. Some people, when they have teenagers in the family, have a 3rd, and they just crowd them in. So it's a very busy side of the road. Okay. There are no sidewalks for pedestrian safety. Children must walk to and from school in the road and often play in the street. Children dart between parked cars and chase balls into the street, into the morning traffic. Just this morning, I was sitting on Caldwell at about 7:45, and I watched a little boy dart between 2 parked cars, chase a ball across the street, and very narrowly miss a home improvement truck as it came down the street toward him. So I am concerned about the safety of the children and any additional congestion or additional cars that are unnecessary. So I am concerned about that. The area needs more green space and fewer cars, but not more cars and traffic. Certainly no one, including myself, would be concerned about building another duplex on Caldwell if it adhered to the current and more expansive zoning. However, voting yes to this variance request would be taking a step back in time to the 1960s or earlier in the century, rather than complying to the more environmentally conscious current zoning code, which requires 12,445 square feet for each new duplex to alleviate crowding and promote safety, health, and well-being. So we ask that the variance be denied.
Thank you, ma'am. Any questions?
I was just curious, how long have you lived at 41 Caldwell?
We actually own the property, we don't live there, but we like the area very much. We've owned it since 1992,
See, okay, thank you.
and we've done a great deal of improvement. We bought it when it was trashed, so that we've put a lot into it, but we also think that there's a tremendous vibrance to the neighborhood.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you, ma'am. Anybody else with questions, concerns, or opposition? Again, just your name and address, ma'am, please.
My name is Jessica Crosby. I live at 46 Caldwell Road, which is on the east side of Caldwell Road, across the street, kind of diagonally there. I've been there for about 15 years, and I live in my house. I don't rent it out. So I am concerned with this addition. As Maura had mentioned, there's a lot of traffic congestion. There are a lot of kids on the street because they walk to the Fairgrounds Elementary and Fairgrounds Middle School, which is around the corner. There are no sidewalks. There are a lot of cars, and a lot of cars that go really fast down the street. With this addition, I see spaces for maybe 2 driveway spots and two garages. That would be for 4 cars. I think most people have 2.2 on average, or more than 2 cars per family, resulting in, no space for them to park, maybe on the side of the road. Concerns when it's a snow emergency where they're gonna put their cars, again, blocking and creating traffic congestion there. I did have questions on what I saw in the drawing for the proposed addition. I think for the picture, it might be explained here as.
Ma'am, can you just speak into the mic? Or
sorry.
That's okay. You could grab the mic out if you'd like.
Okay. So what I think I see here is a single-family home and then another single-family home, not a single family and a duplex, if that's correct, if that could be confirmed. Again, just based on the drawing that I have here, if that was a duplex, again, it only increases my concerns of the congestion for where the parking and stuff would
It's 2
be.
single-family homes connected by garages. So it's
Okay.
just, that's classified as a duplex, even though it doesn't look traditional, what we would think a duplex would look like.
Okay. As a person who owns my home, I am concerned about the diminished value of my property and the surrounding properties. I am aware of the fact that there's a majority of duplexes that are across the street. However, not necessarily in as close vicinity to my house. It's something that I'd be looking at, especially more concerned with the lot that has yet to be developed. So again, I'd like to understand, I know the person had presented some information that, new construction helps increase the value, but I see that as, if this is a rental property, I see that as diminishing the value compared to people who own and live in their homes instead of rent them out. I had another question, and I'm not sure if this is the right forum, of whether or not it would require a different variance if the structure that the newly created 105-164 was to be turned into a duplex. Would that require a variance or some level of notification and planning board? Because again, that would only more exacerbate my concerns there as well. And I think that's about it.
So to address your last question, from what I understand, the lot that's kind of across the street from you was developed to be the minimum size of a single-family dwelling unit. Now, certainly, the applicant, because this is why we're here, any citizen of the city that owns property could come to us and apply for a variance. But again, that burden would probably be really high. But again, the lot was developed to be able to put a single-family home. The testimony that I believe that came in front of us was that will be a single-family home. So, and again, we can get that confirmation once the applicant comes back up. And then I know you made some comments about, and again, I'm familiar with the area too. I know it's a cut-through. I walk kind of in the back of school, and I come down that way. I live off of Lund Road down near Bishop Girton, so I kind of make the loop, and I walk all over the place. Yeah, there's a lot that goes on that street, and you're exactly right. And having looked at, and the other testimony was about the children and the lack of sidewalks. This person has, per the planning board, has donated money to the sidewalk fund. Now, the city chooses how to use that, and Mr. Shaw was an alderman, so he could probably tell you exactly how that's done, but that doesn't necessarily mean they'll construct a sidewalk. It goes to a sidewalk fund, and then at some point, a sidewalk could be constructed. And I think that, just as a general note, if I was living on that street and I was really concerned, I would at least approach my alderman and say, hey, what can be done to construct a sidewalk? Because you're right, there's a lot of kids walking to school there. I mean, there is a lot of kids that live there. I know that because I walk through there. So that's just kind of a side note, but doesn't really impact, for me, it doesn't really impact this much. You know, I'm cognizant of the issue there. And then for the parking, there is a minimum of 2 required spaces for each unit, so they meet that requirement. The garage is 1 spot, and then the driveway as a spot. But I know from walking that area, and again, this is more of code enforcement. If cars are parked on the grass or not where driveways are, you know, if there's an overburden of that, you know, code enforcement will get involved. But unfortunately, we're not the enforcement side of the city's arm. We're here as to look at, you know, people who request variances and special exceptions, and we look at it from that point of view. But again, we do consider that in cases, but according to Mr. Falk, they meet the minimum requirements for parking. But I understand what you're saying. The minute somebody comes over, where are they parking? They're parking on the street, on that one side. Is there, and I think I kind of covered it a little bit, but the applicant is going to have an opportunity to come back and speak to what you have spoken to. And just so both of you know, unless there's somebody else that's going to come up, after we're all done, one of you will have the opportunity to come back and speak again, all right? Okay. Is there any more questions for this person? No? All right, thank you. Is there anybody else with questions, concerns, or opposition to this application that would like to speak? Okay, seeing none. You have 5 minutes to come back and address those issues or correct some of the issues that I may not have gotten correct.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Just to touch on a few of the comments that were made, the plan that we have before you in the proposal for this property does meet, you know, any open space or green space requirements. And as I stated earlier in my presentation, we are proposing actually some stormwater mitigation improvements, which will offset any of the improvements that we're making to the property. So there will be no impact to any of the abutting properties relative to the stormwater. That's, you know, certainly something that the city has been more restrictive on with a lot of these smaller subdivisions. In fact, we had to contemplate that same scenario with the addition of that new lot. So we trying to handle that in a responsible fashion. When it comes to safety and congestion, this proposal is very, it's in harmony with the surroundings. So we're adding one structure to, you know, the road. The density is consistent with the surroundings. The additional traffic that one unit would impose would not be measurable to the human eye. It's a very minimal situation. We are, as you stated, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, meeting the parking requirements for the city with this proposal. I did have an opportunity to talk to my client about the garage. If the board felt that not having a garage would be, you know, advantageous, then that's something that, you know, we could certainly design this structure without that. It was just something that he thought fit in really well with the existing architectural components. And then touching on diminished value, I mean, when someone takes a look at the neighborhood, one additional duplex isn't going to change the neighborhood. One additional brand-new, improved home duplex isn't going to change the neighborhood in a negative way. We can't possibly change the neighborhood from what it is. It's all duplexes on the west side of Caldwell and, behind. And so I don't think that there's a good case for that actually being a diminished value. I think any appraiser is going to look at the surroundings, which is typically 1 or 2 lots removed, and that's what the assessment would be based on. So we don't believe that that would be an issue. The sidewalks, and I won't disagree that typically in a development like this where you have that many kids. I mean, I walked to Fairgrounds Elementary School when I was younger, so I'm very familiar with the neighborhood, and we walked down the street. But as you stated, Mr. Chairman, we did contribute, I think, close to $6,000 to a sidewalk fund as part of the project that we had before the planning board. So that is something that's been contemplated with this project. What I will say with this site is my client has invested a considerable amount of money in cleaning this property up. There's been at least 3 or 4 dumpsters full of trash and debris that's been removed from the property, as well as many cars. So there has been an effort in cleaning up the site and cleaning up the neighborhood. When, I guess just to touch on the hardship, I had an opportunity to talk with my client when he further evaluated the existing structure on the property. Similar to what Mr. Currier had asked, it is a very old structure, so it is in need of significant repair. And adding the duplex to this lot will allow him to put the proper investment into that structure. And so that is, there is some hardship that lies with that, the existing property and bringing it up to code and so on. And he wanted me to certainly touch on that. So I think that addresses everything that was mentioned, but certainly happy to answer any additional questions that the board may have.
Any questions? Thank you very much. If either one of you want to come back, you have an opportunity to speak for 5 minutes in rebuttal. Just your name and address again.
Jessica Crosby, 46 Caldwell Road. Sorry. Okay. So, again, just want to touch upon, reiterate the traffic congestion and pedestrian safety due to the lack of sidewalks, and also added congestion with the traffic with the added parking spaces. There is a concern too of the garages, potentially, the ability to transform those into living spaces. Some people do that, make it like a man cave or something, that then where the cars go becomes even more of an issue. So I think that's a potential risk there. Again, I still have the concern of the diminished value for the surrounding properties. There's a difference between what an appraiser appraises a house value at versus a prospective buyer and their view from their house as to what they get to see. So I do think that there is some impact that has as well. In addition, I bought this house in an established neighborhood. I didn't expect to see, additions to significant property additions or new houses built. This is an older neighborhood, and certainly the opportunity to increase the value of that single-family home, I think, still exists to make it better. And certainly cleaning out the trash from the previous occupants is good. I haven't seen anyone occupy that house, though. I'm not sure if anyone's in there. So that's all I have to say.
Any questions? Thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
With that, I will close the public hearing and open the public meeting. Mr. Minkara.
Unless you want to go in order.
No, that's,
Well, I'm quiet. I've been quiet tonight. I haven't gotten to vote. You know, I will say, overall, I think that the rendering is a very nice one. I have no problem with the garage. I think it's very nice to see an older building reused in this way. I doubt that it would have an adverse impact on the property values, although I don't know that for sure. And there's no question that the houses on that side of the street, you do have a number of duplexes, and the lots are smaller. I can't get to hardship, though. I actually can't get to a few of the criteria. So although the houses, you have duplexes on that side of the street and the lots are smaller, the neighborhood includes both sides of the street. And when you look across the street, the lots are much larger, and they're single-family in nature. I think when I look at this property, you had a oversized single-family lot, over 12,000 square feet. The owner of that property had choices as to how to reasonably use that property. It could have simply remained a large single-family house lot. What the owner chose to do was subdivide it and get another lot. Another choice could have been keep it a larger lot and make it into a duplex. But I don't understand how you keeping the existing single-family home, subdividing off another single-family house lot, somehow then creates a scenario where the owner doesn't have reasonable use of the property. To me, I just don't see how I can get to hardship. I also don't see how we could get to spirit and intent of the ordinance. Clearly, the density requirements were created for a reason. We may agree, we may disagree, but they were. The density requirements in this neighborhood were changed. We're at a scenario where, because of the density requirements, they couldn't use the property. I would look at it differently, but again, they clearly have viable use of the property under the current zoning. So again, the wisdom of changing the zoning, I can't speak to, but it was changed. So I don't see how we get to spirit and intent. I don't see the public interest as well either. I don't see how substantial justice could possibly be done when, again, you've got very viable use of the property. They've managed to increase the use of the property under the current zoning. So hard for me to get to most of that criteria. I would add, I do think parking is relevant. It's relevant because we're increasing the density. Because if the variance were to be granted, there would be an additional residential unit on the street created as a result of the variance that is not otherwise allowed, and that would bring additional vehicles. It would create, it would result in additional parking requirements. So I think the testimony from the abutters related to parking is relevant as well.
Mr. Shaw.
I'm mostly in agreement with Mr. Minkara. Maybe I'm not sure on especially like the parking thing, but I appreciate your point and the argument there. But I think the thing for me is kind of really mostly hinged on the whole thing about the hardship and just seeing the kind of this subdivision, and essentially then it's kind of like the created hardship kind of phenomena. So basically the real intent is to end up with 3 units on the original lot. Granted, it's now 2 separate lots, but ultimately, there's no reason why a single-family home can't and won't be built on that newly created lot. So the end result is an intent to potentially put 3 dwelling units here. And I guess that's where I get hung up also. So I don't think I can support this mostly, and I think Mr. Minkara did a very nice job kind of elaborating on all that, and so I basically appreciate that and concur with his comments and thought there.
Mr. Lionel.
I also appreciate Mr. Minkara and Mr. Shaw's comments, and that the zoning has changed to require more square footage for a duplex, and as Mr. Shaw says, it's sort of a self-created hardship by subdividing the lot and then wanting to add, essentially, by testimony, add 2 more units to what had been a single-family lot. I don't see a compelling reason to approve this application.
Thank you.
My thoughts are in line with Mr. Mancara. And a couple things. If this were approved tonight, I think the garages are like a tasteful component of the design, and I appreciate the architectural rendering. You know, I think that's a good way to work with an existing structure, but I'm stuck on the hardship as well. You know, I was thinking a little earlier in the presentation, like, this structure's probably been there for 100+ years, and then it became a hardship maybe 9 months ago, but it became a hardship when the second lot was created, and I can't get over, you know, ignoring that recent history of it. And there's plenty of room within the zoning code of that existing lot up until when it was subdivided to develop it in I think, a reasonable way within code. And, you know, this is, about a third, 9,000 to 12,000 square feet. That's a pretty large request, and I think it doesn't meet the hardship test. And I'm just kind of repeating what Mr. Mancara said, but I'm not there with it either because of the hardship, and I think it also, as he said, it does not address the spirit and intent of the ordinance with the recent history of this lot. So I'm not in favorable for those. I don't think it meets the two criteria there.
I also struggled with this, and, over the last week or so, having looked at it and gone by several times, and again, for whatever reason, I'm reaffirming what you said, Mr. Curry, is that it'd be one thing if this was just the lot we were looking at, and not that the decision would be any different, but like, again, the separation of the new lot is part of our package, from the planning board minutes, and so having a hard time how would I ignore that at this point? And again, I think it's self-imposed, and there was, obviously, again, in the meeting minutes, as we read, and I think Mr. Rapucci said it very clearly, is that there was, again, to make the 6,000 square feet, there was this easement here, and I don't have an issue with that, and he was right. Blindly, you would just think that's just a straight line, and that's fine. I don't have any problems with that single-family lot there. But again, because that was created, this other situation, arises. So again, I can't find any reason to ignore that knowledge, and just look at it as just its lot itself. And again, not that I would make a different decision at this point, because, the fact is, it's true that there are other lots that are 9,000 square feet. We know that that's not the current ordinance. When we talk about the character of the neighborhood and those types of things, we have considered those things in situations, but I think, again, those situations were not created because of a subdivision that was done on an existing lot. So, unfortunately, I won't be able to support this application.
I think I concur with all of you. I think the hardship was created when the lot was subdivided, and there wouldn't be any hardship at all if it was left alone. And for that reason, I concur with the rest of you. I don't think I can support this at all.
Mr. Correa.
I just wanted, it's interesting that you were talking, and appropriately so, of the planning board, deliberation, which is part of the record. And even though this jogged lot line isn't really germane to this application, it is, in a way, we're looking at it. I would see it differently. Like, let's just say if the flag lot, because this is kind of a flag lot at this point, was before us, I don't see it the same way in, like, it would look like a regular lot. I think as time goes on, a fence or a car or something is gonna be there that one owner is gonna want. And so I mean, I respectfully disagree. I think like the kind of flag lot is out of character of the neighborhood, but that's not really before us tonight. But I was just, since the point of discussion was there, I just wanted to throw that out, that if it was, I mean, that to me is a bit out of character with the neighborhood, but that's not really for us tonight. But I did want to have that out there, that I didn't really see it the way the planning board does. It's like it's just, you wouldn't know it's there. I think you would know it's there, and it would be problematic, and it's not good zoning to allow flag lots unless it's an unusual situation. But anyway, I just wanted to throw that out.
Does anybody want to make a motion? Mr. Courier?
Sure. I make a motion, again, case number 6, the owner is GMAC Properties LLC, and the address is 41 Caldwell Road. Again, the request before us tonight is a variance from Land Use Code, Section 190-16, and within that, that's Table 16.3 for minimum land area. The requirement is 12,445 square feet minimum. The proposal before us tonight is 9,375 square feet. And that proposal is to convert a single-family dwelling unit into a two-family dwelling unit in the RB zone. The board finds that this variance is not needed to enable the applicant's proposed use of the property. I think the board finds that it does not meet the hardship criteria in that the very recently created lot, which is undersized, is not necessary, given the fact that it was an oversized lot that was just recently subdivided. In the totality of how this lot has played out in the recent future, I think the board finds it's not within the spirit and intent of the ordinance to allow this minimum land area, given the recent subdivision of the lot. I think the board really hasn't spoken one way or the other about the adversity effect of property values in the surrounding parcels. I think the board finds it is contrary to the public interest to allow the overall increase of density, given what's one large lot, which is now 2 lots, and then of the 2 lots, one of the 2 lots is proposed to go to a double family dwelling unit. So in totality, I think the board finds that's not contrary to public interest.
That it is contrary to.
It is contrary to public interest. Thank you for so I think the board finds it doesn't meet those 3 criteria, and with that, I make a motion to deny the request.
The motion is to deny the request. Is there a second? Mr. Lionel, any discussion? All those in favor of denying this application? That's 5-0. Unfortunately, sir, the application was denied. Again, you know that there's a 30-day window of appeal, so you can contact Mr. Falk. Thank you very much. With that, I'll close case number 6. And we're going to take a 5-minute break. And I know Mr. Shaw is going to recuse himself for the rest of the evening. Thank you.
The work obligation,
Well, thanks for
evening. So I will read case number 7. I'll open case number 7. It is for owner Teresa Richard, 10 Forest Park Drive. Description is Teresa Richard, owner, 10 Forest Park Drive, sheet 50, lot 7. Requesting the following. 1, special exception from Land Use Code, section 190-15, table 15-1, number 3, to allow an accessory in-law dwelling unit. And 2, variance from Land Use Code, section 190-32, to exceed maximum size of accessory dwelling unit, 750 square feet permitted, 900 square feet proposed, to enlarge one-car garage into a two-car garage and construct an attached accessory dwelling unit in the back of the garage. It's in the R9 zoning district. Welcome, you want to come on up and give us your name and address and tell us what you want to do?
Hello, my name is Teresa Richard. I live at 10 Forest Park Drive in Nashua. My parents have had some medical issues, so currently they live on a 2-level home where there's stairs, where the kitchen and the bedrooms are upstairs and the living area downstairs. Since then, they've had, it's difficult, very difficult for them to get up and down the stairs, so we've kind of made a bedroom in one of the offices downstairs for to make it easier for them. So what I would like to do is propose to build an accessory dwelling unit at my home, which would include removing an existing breezeway and a very small 1-car garage, and make a kind of a new den breezeway where the existing one is now, and turn it into a 2-car garage. And I'll have it maybe a bonus room up top of the garage, which I'm not sure exactly what I'm gonna do with that. Possibly, maybe later, a bedroom, a master bedroom, and maybe add a second bath to my house, because I have 1 bath now. And then off of the back of the 2-car garage, I'd like to have an accessory dwelling unit for my parents, 1 bedroom, a bath, and just a combination living room, and kitchen, so that it's all on 1 level. Will make it easier for them. I've been working with my architect and to keep with the integrity of the street and the homes. We're just gonna kind of bump my garage forward a little bit so that we have an entrance on the side where myself and my parents could go walk down through the garage, and I'd have an entrance to my house. And a few feet from there, they would continue down the end of the garage and have an access into their apartment. So if you were looking at my house from the street, it would look almost very similar to what it is now, except it would be a 2-car garage looking at it from the street with no front door to make it look like there was an apartment or anything back there. And then the special exception is because we need to make things a little bit oversized in case they have to go back to a walker or a wheelchair. So I just need a little bit of extra space, and that's where the 150 square feet come in. Within the special exception of the 900, the floor plan, the footprint for this addition is still within the setbacks on what you need to build an addition. So I guess that's where my variance and the special exception comes in.
The 900 square feet.
Yes.
The extra that you're looking for, I was trying to understand why it was, why you needed more. And again, I viewed your home. I don't live too far from you, and I
Yep.
walk around your house, and
Sure.
I've seen it, and I know that you have a, large backyard.
Yeah.
You can accommodate that. So the idea about the 950 square feet, the extra square footage.
900, yeah.
900, I'm
Yep.
sorry. Is that primarily because of the way the construction's gonna be with the room above, and it's kind of like that's what's left over, or did you design it that
No,
way?
it's more that I have to have an oversized bathroom, so that, the bathroom just has to be bigger in case of a wheelchair, or the bedroom just needs to be a little bit bigger for maneuverability. Not that they're in that position right now, but it's just to give them a little bit more extra space in case they
So-
need some kind of,
So so in some respects, you're planning for, I guess, future handicap, somewhat
yeah,
type
and
accessibility type of.
they need help, and I can be close by and supervision, and if they need me, I'm right there.
Okay.
So it's pretty much for them to move in now. I mean, they're fairly mobile, but, I mean, they have had setbacks medical where they're finally progressed at a position where they're just getting out of a walker now from a wheelchair. So I just never know.
Right. Okay, thank you. Any questions for the applicant? Mr. McCara? Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Mr. McCara?
Just the 900 square feet, was that figure given to you by the architect?
Yeah, it's somewhere around there.
Okay.
Yep.
I just wasn't quite getting to that number.
Was
that seemed high to me, but
Oh,
nevertheless.
well, maybe it's like 8, 9. I just said approximately 900, approximately.
Mr. Lionel?
Was there any attempt to design the accessory dwelling unit to fit within the ordinance's 750 square foot requirement?
Yes, there was, but I guess by the time we figured out what like an ADA, not that it's gonna be, but we needed something larger, entrances, the walls need to be wider, and we want to have an entrance from the bedroom to the bathroom, and primarily just a little bit of extra space for the future.
I wouldn't count even this, that's just all wood.
Mr. Currier, Mr. Currier. Mr. Falk.
Please, Mr.
I know, I was looking at Mr. Currier, I'm like thinking of, Mr. Falk was just doing some quick calculations, and we're coming up, without the bathroom, we're coming up to about 700 square feet, right?
Maybe a little more than
Yeah,
that.
just a little bit more than that.
So it's under.
Looks like 22 by, say, 30, about 33, close to 700, plus
Yeah.
the bathroom a little bit.
That's exactly where I was.
Yeah.
It's a
Maybe low 8s or so. I wouldn't count the garage or this room next to the garage, or other garage, so I don't think it's 900. I think it's a lot less than that.
So too.
Any other
Okay,
questions
well,
for the applicant?
My math
Even
is
better.
off, sorry, yeah.
Any other questions to the applicant? Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
All right. With that, I will close the public hearing because there is nobody else in the audience tonight. So I will close the public hearing and open the public meeting for case number 7. Mr. Currier?
So on this application, I appreciate the architectural renderings and working with an architect. And I concur that, you look at the other houses on the street when I drove by in the pictures tonight, that this generally proposed addition is not out of character. It is in character of the neighborhood because there's other larger houses there. So that's all good, and I'm fully supportive of the special exception. I am a little bit struggling with the 900 versus 750 square feet, and I'm looking forward to 4 other opinions. But my thought is with, especially the engagement of the architect, while more is always better, it's not a situation of, say, an existing garage where you're making the second floor an in-law, or the basement, say, of a ranch house that we typically see, and therefore there's a request for overage. It would be my sense that the 750 could be met. Maybe it's not desired by the applicant, but it could be met. So I guess I'm not hard and fast one way or the other on that. Again, I'm fully supportive of the in-law, and looking forward to 4 opinions on the variance request.
Mr. Lionel?
I'm fully in support of the special exception for the ADU. The 900 square foot request did give me pause, which is why I asked the applicant about had there been an attempt to keep it down. But like Mr. Mancara, I'm looking at this drawing with the dimensions here, and I'm not seeing that the ADU is even close to that big. So, well, depends on what you're looking at, I suppose. I mean, yeah. looks like it's closer to, as Mr. Falk said, somewhere in the 800s. And if that is the case, then as Mr. Courier said, normally when we approve overages on the square footage is because it's a second story over an existing foundation, which this isn't. But I'm less concerned about what appears to be the smaller overage based on these drawings.
Yeah, I wouldn't count that.
So,
8/8. It's under 9 though. It's under 9. I don't know exactly what it is. That's what I think.
Mr. Falk is,
It looks like it's under 900 square feet. I would say it's somewhere in the mid-8s.
Right. I mean, for me, if I could add, just, I totally support the special exception. I'm also struggling with the size, and I think to that point where it's not the conversion of an existing space, it's totally new construction. I wonder whether it couldn't, simply be designed to meet the requirements. I'm not seeing that it's because of the architecture of the house, it's following any particular line. So I struggle with the variance. I'm okay with the special exception. I'm hearing, the ADA comments. Yet, having lived in a 600 square foot one-bedroom apartment, I think, I don't know, I'm not sure that you need to go beyond 750 to meet ADA, although I do appreciate those comments. And I can see how one would desire more space. 750 is not bad for a one-bedroom apartment, size-wise.
Ms. McKay.
750 is not bad for an apartment. I think in order, what she's thinking to be ADA compliant and using a modification to have wider entrances and lower sinks, something that could be ready to accommodate. So she's looking ahead to modifications now. And while 900 does seem like a lot, in listening to all of you and listening to Carter and to Mr. Boucher, it seems more like 850 would be the actual footage. And I don't know if when a motion is made, it could be directed maybe to 850 as opposed to 900, because the applicant herself said she just was doing, probably like I would do, a ballpark math and being safe rather than sorry, and not understanding that we have compliance issues and code regulations that we need to meet. I'm not adverse to this special exception whatsoever for the ADU, and I think if it was in keeping with around 850 square feet for the actual square footage of the ADU, I would be fine with the variance.
I'm in favor of the accessory dwelling unit. And I don't, the square footage, I can look at it both ways. I completely see where, in the plan that it could be at 750. But I don't know if, again, if I would know the difference from looking at the house from the front. So if a stipulation to have it at 850 max, and if that would make a difference for somebody, I would welcome that, and again, I would support that wholeheartedly. Mr. Courier?
One thought I have is, certainly we have 5 affirmative opinions here for the special exception, so maybe we could move forward with that. For the variance, just one thought is, I don't think we fully know if we have this design before us, and it's not clear to us. It seems like that's not 900, and maybe a table to clarify what this request is, have the architect say this is this many square feet, because we're not seeing the 900. And also just kind of a sanity check as to whether, whatever that request is, over 750. It sounds like it's over 750 to some extent, just to clarify and see if there can be any movement towards meeting it or not. Not saying that the applicant would have to come back by meeting it, probably not, but maybe just at least clarify what this request is before us.
So your suggestion is to table the case and just get clarification on square footage?
Well, I was gonna suggest we go ahead and vote on the special exception, because I think we're all fine with that.
Right.
And we table the variance
Okay.
to the next meeting, just to get that square footage clarified for us. And, I think the applicant's been following along with how we're, a bit hesitant to, well, I don't think we understand exactly what's before us, but it's not 900 and how much of that.
And if it is, we would like to know exactly.
What it is,
It is,
And why?
or not, right. Right, and it gives the client, the applicant an opportunity also, if there's any modifications that they want to make at that time, it won't change the approval of the special exception. Okay.
Lower number anyway,
Right.
as far as the variance goes.
Right. Yeah,
You're not
'cause
gonna
it-
come back with a higher number than 900,
Right.
so.
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe the first case on the, if you decide to table it, it'll be the first case on the agenda, before the others.
If folks are good with that,
Yeah,
I'd make a
let's-
motion on the special exception right now first.
Sure.
Okay, on the special exception, again, the owner is Teresa Richard of 10 Forest Park Drive. And there are two requests before us tonight. The first is a special exception to allow an accessory in-law dwelling unit. This request, I'm making a motion to approve this request. It's listed in the table of uses. It's section 190-15, table 15-1, number 3. I think the board finds that this proposed accessory dwelling unit will not create undue traffic congestion or unduly impair pedestrian safety. I think the board finds there'll be no impact on public water, drainage, sewer, or other municipal system. The special regulations, well, we didn't actually talk about those. The 9 accessory dwelling units, maybe I'll just, should we ask the,
Would you like to reopen the public hearing just to get 2 answers for that?
Yeah.
And for the date certain for the comeback?
that would be prudent, yeah.
So
So I make a motion to open the public hearing to clarify the 9 special regulations for an accessory dwelling unit, and if we come back to review the date that we'd consider the variance request, because even though I haven't made a motion on that, that's what we're talking about, so.
Anybody second that?
I'll second.
Mr. Lionel, all in favor? 5. Ma'am, we're just going to ask you 2 specific questions. So first of all, as regards to and we usually catch this, but we missed the time. The accessory dwelling units, there was 9 criteria. Are you familiar with those?
Yeah, some of them, I didn't do any research really to go over
So
it much before I
why
got
don't
here.
why don't we take a minute, because we have plenty of time.
Sure.
Mr. Carter's going to give this, we're going to go right through them, and I'm just going to need an affirmative yes or no. I'm not agreeing to that. So let's just quickly go down the list. I'll just read a line. The accessory dwelling unit shall be clearly incidental and subordinate in extent, use, and purpose of primary structure, and does not exceed 750 square feet. We understand that you are also applying for a variance, but for this particular motion, do you agree with this?
Yes.
Okay. I know you sound unsure. The 750 square
Because
feet.
it's
so, you know,
850,
For an
but no.
accessory dwelling unit, that's the
Okay,
criteria.
sure.
You are asking for a variance above this, and we'll address that separately.
Sure.
Okay. The accessory dwelling unit shall be the only accessory dwelling unit within or on the same lot as a single-family dwelling unit.
Yes.
3, the accessory dwelling unit shall not alter the single-family character or appearance of the single-family dwelling or its conformity with the character of the neighborhood. So A, no new entrance or exit, no new curb cut from the street, and the exterior design shall be compatible with the single-family dwelling unit.
Yes, correct.
Okay. 4, the owner of property must occupy either the primary or accessory dwelling unit.
Yes.
The owner of the property shall provide the city of Nashua a covenant for filing with the Hillsborough County Registry of Deeds, along with appropriate filing fees. And it gives you an example of the covenant.
Yes.
6, one additional off-street parking space is required above the minimum standard for the single-family house.
Yes.
You have plenty of parking
Yep.
there. An interior door shall be provided between the primary dwelling unit and accessory dwelling unit.
Yes.
The single-family dwelling unit and accessory dwelling unit shall not be separated in ownership, included by condominium ownership.
Yep.
And then finally, the accessory dwelling unit shall be associated with single-family detached dwellings and shall not be associated with manufactured housing as defined in RSA 674:31.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So you were following along. The other thing that we'd like to get affirmation for you, we're going to make a motion forthwith to table the second, your variance request to
Okay.
get more information. And you've been following on what we're looking for. We're looking for an exact number, or if there's any
Yep.
particular changes that you'd like to make to your plan, that's really up to you, but we're looking for an exact number, square footage. So we like to table that to our next meeting, would be April 9th. If that's too soon, we can push it off another couple of weeks.
No, I think that's fine.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right.
First case.
And it'll be the first case, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay? All right, with that, I'll close the public hearing, open the public meeting.
All right, so back to the motion for approval of special exception. We can now say that the 9 special regulations are fulfilled. I think the board finds that this proposed accessory dwelling unit will not impair the integrity or be out of character with the neighborhood or be detrimental to the health, morals, or welfare of the residents. So with that, I think I make a motion to approve the special exception because the 5 special exception criteria, I think, is met in this application, and the 9 criteria for accessory dwelling units is also met in the application and by testimony. So I make a motion to approve the special exception.
Seconded by Ms. McKay. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? That's 5-0. Congratulations, ma'am, that passes.
And on the variance before us tonight, again, there's a variance request to exceed the maximum accessory dwelling unit. 750 square feet is permitted, 900 square feet is proposed. I make a motion to table this variance to the next meeting of April 9th, and I make a motion to table so that the applicant, the board has requested from the applicant to clarify the exact square footage that is on the plan before us tonight, and also for the applicant to consider if there can be a lesser square footage or perhaps no variance needed, or what exactly square foot is being requested. So I make a motion to table to the April 9th.
Seconded by Ms. McKay. Any discussion? All in favor? That's 5-0. All right, so we're all set, ma'am. So we'll table till April 9th. So we'll see you then. Okay, if you have any questions, feel free to call Mr. Fogg. All right?
Thank you very much.
Okay, have a good night. With that, I'll close case number 7. We have some meeting minutes from March 12th. That was our 15-minute meeting. Does anybody see any issues or anything with that? All right, with that said, I'll make a motion to approve the March 12th, 2019 meeting minutes. Second by Mr. Courier. Any discussion? All in favor? That's 5-0. We have an agenda for next, for the April 9th meeting. Does anybody see any regional impact?
Is the Farley Road, is that on the border of Hollis or away from it?
It's a little bit away from, it's near Pilgrim Circle. It's just west of Pilgrim Circle, that new development that was just put in with like the 30 homes. It's, doesn't border any other town, but it's very close to Amherst.
I mean, my sense is for the proposal,
We could notify them.
you know, probably not, but maybe,
It's really for an accessory structure, so.
I mean, that's the only thing that catches my attention.
So it's not really a business being worked out of there, so Probably not, right?
Yeah, I
I
would
think if there
agree.
was maybe a business, maybe there'd be a concern, but,
Yeah, I think
Large barn.
it's a large barn, so I don't think that, yeah.
okay, so.
I
we
make a
don't s-
motion that there's, I think that there's no regional impact, or do we just do it?
We just kind of voice vote. I don't think we see any.
Yeah, right.
All right.
No.
Okay. Is there any other discussion for this evening? Anybody want to make a motion?
Well, with Mr. Shaw not here, I'll jump in and make a motion to
Okay.
adjourn.
All right, motion to adjourn.
I was
seconded
waiting
by-
for him to get
Seconded
on.
by, who's going to second that motion? Mr. Mancara?
Get him
All
on
in
the
favor?
9:02.
5. Okay, we're adjourned at 9:02.